Hey guys, tonight, we're venturing back thousands of years into the sweltering, fly-infested corridors of ancient Egypt, not into the grand temples or royal processions, but into something much stickier. You're standing in the middle of a sandstone palace courtyard, the desert sun blinding above your linen gown, glued to your back with sweat. The air is thick with the scent of honeyed myrrh and something more human. You're about to shadow one of Egypt's royal women as she goes about her beauty and hygiene rituals, and trust me, you probably won't survive this with your dignity or stomach intact. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge across heated stone floors and already your skin is protesting. Egyptian royal women, despite their opulent lives, weren't immune to one universal truth. Ancient Egypt was hot. Not just bring a fan hot, think 104 degrees F in the shade, with not a breeze in sight. And what did they wear? Layers of fine linen tightly wrapped and bleached so aggressively that the fabric would sometimes flake off during the day. Sweat constant, ventilation non-existent, and deodorant. That's where things get creative. The noble solution to this constant sweat storm was to hide the odor, not prevent it. You'd start your morning drenched in perfume oils, usually a blend of almond or moringa oil infused with flowers, herbs, and resins. Some were lovely jasmine, myrrh, frankincense, but others leaned toward the pungent, and there was a lot of it. You weren't just dabbing wrists. You were soaking your skin, scalp, and sometimes even garments in these heady concoctions. The result? You smelled like a walking apothecary left in the sun for too long, and it didn't last. Within hours, the oils would break down in the heat, mixing with sweat and dead skin, creating a uniquely sour perfume no one talks about in museum gift shop books. Historians still argue whether this was considered erotic, religious, or just desperate. Some suggest these scents were offerings to the gods, others that they were aphrodisiacs. Realistically, it was probably a bit of all three, and a full-on sensory assault either way. Then there's the linen rot. Yes, it's as delightful as it sounds. Royal women wore freshly laundered linen wraps daily, but laundering in ancient Egypt didn't involve Tide Pods and machine cycles. Clothes were soaked in natron, a salty alkaline compound, beaten with paddles and sun-dried until stiff. Sweat would stiffen the fabric by midday. After a few wears mold, the folds near armpits and thighs would reek. Even the wealthiest royals had only so many changes, and laundry days weren't daily events. One fringe theory claims elite women wore perfume cones on their heads, little waxy domes that slowly melted and released scent throughout the day. Most scholars agree these were symbolic, seen mostly in art. But there's a tantalizing and slightly horrifying idea that these waxy blobs did exist, sliding down women's wigs and into their neck folds by mid-afternoon. Elegant. As you follow our royal woman through her palace, take note of how often she reapplies oil. Not out of vanity, but survival. Oils also acted as primitive moisturizers, bug repellents, and UV protection. And yes, the walls of her chambers may be cool stone, but her bed, canopy-draped plush and deeply absorbent. Imagine sleeping every night in an oil and sweat-soaked sponge and pretending it's divine. Of course, it wasn't all gross. The preparation had ritual elegance. Servants, often perfumers themselves, would prepare the oils with care. There were sacred blends for the day, others for sleep. One scroll even references an oil named the scent of a royal's shadow. A bit poetic for what probably smelled like fermented tree sap. You can almost feel it now, the weight of the linen on your shoulders, the oil collecting at the small of your back, the ever-present itch of sweat pooling behind your knees. And just when you think you've adjusted, a sandstorm kicks up outside, dust particles flying in through stone slats and sticking to every oiled inch of your skin like seasoning. There are records of noblewomen sneaking off during midday to reapply fresh oils. Some rooms in temples even had designated scent basins, mini spa corners. But these moments of reprieve were rare. For most of the day, you sat in that sweaty sheen, praying the gods mistook your body odor for pious incense. Modern Egyptologists still wonder just how bearable this life was. Some speculate women grew nose-blind to their own musk. Others propose that the heavy oils carried spiritual significance, masking the human in favor of the divine. After all, goddesses didn't sweat, or if they did, it smelled like lotus and cinnamon. A final oddity. In rare tomb texts, there's mention of a sacred ointment made from brace-yourself fermented goose fat, applied to armpits and thighs to cleanse evil vapors. Evil vapors. You may call it B.O. But in ancient Egypt, it was a demon problem. Goose fat didn't solve much, but it sure made you shinier. And as the sun sets and the palace quiets, your skin is glowing. Not with health, but with a glistening film of layered oil dust and ambition. You sink into your linen-draped mattress, which smells faintly of last week's frankincense. And something else. Something very human. You wake with your skin still slick from yesterday's ritual oilings, and the scent of fermenting lotus still stubbornly clinging to your collarbones. As you stretch beneath a canopy woven from moth-eaten linens, something more pressing stirs in your royal gut. It's time for what should be a private moment, but you're a noblewoman of ancient Egypt. Privacy is not part of your bathroom vocabulary. You slide your feet into sandals that once belonged to a sister wife, an awkward hand-me-down tradition, and shuffle down a shaded corridor. The palace is alive with murmuring servants, whispering priests, and the muffled slosh of chamber pots being emptied far too near the kitchen courtyard. You veer left, following a path marked not by signs, but by smell. Welcome to the royal toilet, a room both sacred and sickening. It's a squat little chamber with walls painted in symbolic blues and yellows, meant to invoke divine protection and perhaps distract from what's happening in the middle. A block of limestone serves as the toilet base with a carved depression for sitting and an open slot leading straight to a ceramic jar below. There's no water, there's no flushing, just the open air and the brutal Egyptian heat. The smell is thick, cloying, sweet in the worst possible way. But don't worry, there's perfume, lots of it. Palace attendants douse the walls with incense smoke multiple times a day, and some noblewomen keep little bundles of scented reeds tied to their belts to wave under their noses while doing their business. You follow suit. Now you smell like burning frankincense and ammonia. It gets better. After relieving yourself, the real horror begins. Toilet paper isn't invented for another few thousand years. Instead, you reach for a handful of pottery shards called ostraca, sharp-edged, sun-baked fragments. Scholars still debate whether noblewomen actually used these or if they were reserved for, shall we say, less refined rears. But there's no clear record of an alternative, unless you count linen scraps, which were expensive and reused far too often to feel clean. And here's a charming fringe detail. Some of these potsherds bore writing notes, grocery lists, or even prayers. Imagine wiping with your cousin's laundry inventory. Or worse, a love poem from a scribe. You shift uncomfortably, already regretting that honey and barley porridge. Once done, you ring a bell, yes, a literal bell for a handmaid to remove the waste jar beneath your toilet. She winces, not at the smell, but because today's collection includes the Queen's refuse. That means a priest must now inspect it for omens. Is there something in your contribution that suggests a future pregnancy? A bad omen? An insult to the gods? Historians still argue whether this was routine practice or rare superstition, but the point remains, even your bowels are monitored. Now let's talk plumbing, or rather the fantasy of it. While some elite homes in later dynasties had basic drainage systems, royal palaces relied on gravity and manpower. That means chamber pots had to be hand-carried outside the city walls and dumped often into the Nile or designated compost pits. During annual flooding, some waste was carried back into irrigation channels, which means the water used to irrigate your perfume gardens may have, well, seasoned undertones. And you're not alone in this grand charade of cleanliness. The palace was filled with noblewomen, sisters, cousins, concubines, all maneuvering around each other's toilet habits. With so few dedicated privies, it was common to line up even gossip while waiting. Imagine sharing royal gossip while perched over a terracotta bowl, praying the bees buzzing around the incense don't get too curious. There are mentions in temple inscriptions of special perfumed pastes applied to noblewomen's thighs and backsides to reduce odor. One formula includes cedar resin, honey, and crushed herbs, essentially gluing the stink shut with tree sap. Delightful. Some priests claimed the act of relieving oneself was a release of sin and ritual purification had to follow. So you shuffle over to a basin where attendants pour cool water over your hands and arms. You dry them on a towel that smells used, because it is. Washed weekly in communal vats with natron and river water, these towels rarely dried fully. They're musty, sometimes crusty, but they're better than using your own linen hem. You finish up with a spritz of sacred perfume stored in alabaster jars shaped like the goddess Hathor, the deity of beauty and joy. The irony is rich. You dab the oil behind your ears and step back into the corridor grateful to be done, until the next time the lentils you had for dinner knock at your door. Oh, and one last little gem. Some scholars think noblewomen may have used a type of portable toilet when traveling, essentially a glorified pot inside a gilded chest. Not for privacy, but so their waste could be carried and buried in blessed ground. Yes, even your poop was divine. You return to your quarters, lighter, sweatier, and mildly perfumed in the worst way. A servant follows discreetly behind you with a fan, and another one carts off the now reeking waste jar like it's the Ark of the Covenant. Because in this palace everything has meaning, even what you leave behind. And so as the sun creeps higher, casting jagged shadows across the frescoed walls, your daily hygiene rituals are just beginning. And this was only step one. You haven't even touched your hair yet. You pause just long enough to catch a faint breeze filtering through a cracked palace window, but it's no match for what comes next. Because now it's time to tackle what ancient Egyptian noblewomen feared more than death drought, or a poorly mixed Kohl stick body hair. Hairlessness to these women wasn't just beauty, it was purity, social class, divine order. And keeping your body smooth in this furnace of a climate wasn't optional. It was enforced. Every visible inch had to be as bare as a limestone statue. Arms, legs, underarms, even the delicate parts. A single missed patch. Scandalous. But here's the kicker, you don't have razors. You have flint knives. Yes, flint. Rough, brittle, and prone to chipping. The shaving process is a daily blood sport. You sit on a low stool servant at the ready, with a ceramic bowl of water, a lump of something pretending to be soap and the dreaded blade. She starts with your legs, drawing the stone knife carefully along your shin. You wince. Every few strokes, she rinses the blade in gritty water that looks like someone washed a camel in it. No one's invented the concept of sterilization. That's a future problem. And when flint fails, there's arsenic. Literally. One preserved recipe from a tomb in Thebes calls for a depilatory cream made of quicklime and orpiment, a mineral loaded with arsenic. It burned the hair right off, along with the top few layers of your skin. Smooth, yes. Comfortable, not even a little. Historians still argue whether this blend was for occasional use or if it was a daily ritual of quiet chemical warfare. Judging by the scarring found on some mummified noblewomen, it may have been tragically frequent. You exhale as your handmaid moves to your arms. She hums to distract you from the sting, and you breathe through your nose, which was a mistake because the cream being applied next smells like a mix of chalk dust, boiled garlic, and regret. You're told this one has honey in it to soften the blow. It doesn't. There's a fringe theory that elite women used pumice stones after shaving to polish the skin smooth. Sounds nice in theory until you realize pumice is volcanic rock. And these weren't the ergonomic spa versions. These were fist-sized hunks that tore at the skin like an ancient loofah made by a sadist. Still, it beat walking around with leg hair, eyebrows plucked by hand, one agonizing pinch at a time. Some women preferred the clean slate look and removed them completely only to redraw them later with Kohl. Others kept a single brow line for luck, which probably just meant their tweezers broke. And yes, the tweezers were made of bronze, heavy, dull, and as graceful as pinching your skin with a lobster claw. You glance down and your legs now gleam not with dew, but with a mixture of sweat oil and faint streaks of blood. Your servant offers a strip of linen to dab at the cuts. It's the same strip used by your cousin yesterday. Lovely. Even more unsettling are the intimate areas. These are handled delicately, or as delicately as can be done with a flint knife. Some noblewomen performed this themselves. Others trusted their most loyal servants. Either way, one slip and you're making a sacrificial offering to Bastet you did not intend. The risk of infection sky high. Yet the pressure to be smooth was immense. Being unshaven was considered not just unclean, but unholy. The gods were said to favor the hairless. Priests shaved everything before rituals and royal women followed suit. It wasn't about comfort, it was about control. Cleanliness equaled divinity. You weren't just removing body hair, you were distancing yourself from the animal world. And yet, not all hair was bad. Hair on the head sacred. Even if you didn't show your real locks, you still had to care for the scalp beneath the wigs. We'll get to that later. But here's the irony, while every other follicle was condemned, eyebrow stencils were a thing. If your natural brows were thin or patchy from all that plucking, You'd use a little bone template and a brush dipped in powdered galena or soot to draw them back on. Nothing like carving your face clean just to paint it back the next morning. Some noblewomen collected their fallen hairs, eyebrow trimmings, pubic fuzz, even stray leg strands, and burned them in small clay dishes as an offering to Hathor. A kind of follicle-based prayer. Historians still argue whether this was symbolic or just a way to stop servants from gossiping about what they found in the razor bowl. The final step in this lovely ordeal: oil. Again. A thick coating of scented oil is slathered over your skin to soothe the dozens of micro-cuts you've accumulated. It stings like 1,000 bee stings dipped in myrrh. You don't scream because that would be undignified. Instead, you smile faintly and pretend you're already ascending to the field of reeds. But you don't forget. The sting lingers. And it will linger tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. Because there's no break. You are a royal woman of Egypt, and smooth skin is your legacy even if it takes your epidermis with it. You finally rise lightheaded and sore, your skin gleaming in the torchlight like polished alabaster. It's almost beautiful. Almost. You're freshly scraped, glistening with oil, and thoroughly exhausted from the morning's flint knife exfoliation. But your day as an Egyptian noblewoman is far from over. Now it's time to make yourself youthful, dewy, and divine using something that came out of a crocodile. Yes, really. You settle onto a low stool in your private chamber, its walls painted with scenes of the Nile and its gods. But the real drama is happening in the clay bowl set before you. It contains your most prized cosmetic mixture, a face mask made from crocodile dung, sour milk, honey, and frankincense. The smell. Imagine someone left cheese out in the sun, then stirred it with a pond stick. But to you, this is youth in a bowl. You dip 2 fingers in and begin smearing the concoction across your face. The texture is gritty. Bits of dry dung crumble as you spread, mixing with the stickiness of the honey and the tang of curdled milk. It drips slightly down your jaw. It's cold, though, and there's a strange comfort in that. At least for now. To be fair, you're not completely out of your mind. The lactic acid in the sour milk has legitimate exfoliating properties, and some animal waste does have antibacterial effects. But historians still argue whether noblewomen truly applied crocodile dung to their faces regularly, or whether it was used symbolically in ritual purification. Either way, it's written in papyrus records as excellent for youthful appearance. Who are you to argue? This face mask is part of a larger royal obsession: staying young forever. Aging isn't just unattractive, it's spiritually dangerous. Wrinkles suggest you're fading from the favor of the gods. So noblewomen go to extremes. Some recipes call for crushed bees, rose oil, and malachite paste. One particularly questionable formula included mashed donkey spleen and powdered alabaster. The result was a thick, chalky face cream that offered both protection and a ghostly glow. But crocodile dung remains the favorite. Perhaps because it came from the Nile's most feared beast. Wearing it in a strange way was like absorbing the creature's power. And since crocodiles were sacred to the god Sobek, it was almost a divine skincare routine. Almost. Your servant ties a cloth around your hair to keep it out of the way, then begins prepping your bath. It's not the luxurious soak you might be imagining. The tub is a stone basin barely long enough to lie in, and the water's been heating in ceramic jars out in the sun all morning. It's lukewarm at best. But the real treat, donkey milk, Cleopatra wasn't the only one who believed in its magic. Noblewomen in her time, and even long before, were soaking in donkey milk baths, believing it would make their skin glow like moonlight. A typical session used around 700 liters of milk. That's roughly 20 donkeys' worth. The milk, now faintly sour, is poured into your bath. It smells like a mix between yogurt and despair. You lower yourself into the creamy water. It's slippery, slick. There's a ring of scum forming near the edges and floating bits of flower petals that were added last minute for elegance. One brushes against your chin, and you flinch, not because it's dirty, but because you're unsure whether it's a petal or something else that got in there by accident. Donkey hair. It's always donkey hair. The soak is supposed to last 20 minutes, during which you close your eyes and think pure, ageless thoughts. But instead, you can't stop noticing the milk film clinging to your elbows or the faint buzz of flies nearby. You swat at them lazily, hoping the incense burners in the corners are doing their job. Some fringe papyri even suggest adding lizard fat to the milk bath. Said to soften limbs and encourage youth, the fat was melted down, mixed with honey, and stirred into the bath water. Thankfully, you've skipped that step today. But your cousin swears by it. A few minutes into your soak, a servant brings a tiny stone bowl filled with natron, that same salty compound used for mummification. Here it's used as a scrub. Mixed with oil and rosewater, it makes a coarse paste that you rub over your shoulders, arms, and back. It stings. You have open micro-cuts from this morning's shave. But pain is beauty, and you're starting to believe it. Historians still debate whether these practices were widely adopted or limited to temple ritual contexts. Some argue that these treatments were reserved for priestesses or queens, only performed in sacred bath chambers under the supervision of goddess cults. Others believe the same substances trickled into more domestic, everyday routines. Judging by how closely beauty magic and medicine blended in ancient Egypt, the answer might be somewhere in between. Finally, you're lifted from the bath by your most trusted handmaid. She wraps you in linen still slightly scratchy from sun drying and leads you to the perfuming table. You catch a glimpse of yourself in a polished copper mirror. Your skin is blotchy. Your face smells like a farm. But yes, you do have a certain glow. Radiant. Slightly fermented. But radiant. To seal the ritual, another layer of perfumed oil is applied. This one is richer, made from lotus and cinnamon bark aged in clay vessels for months. It smells stronger, deeper. And it doesn't quite mask the leftover scent of crocodile dung. But at this point, you don't care. You're clean, you're scrubbed, and you've just bathed in donkey milk like a queen. You settle back into your chair, glowing with effort, your skin slippery as a papyrus scroll in high humidity. The bath is drained through a trench carved into the stone, right into the herb garden behind your chambers. The one that feeds your beauty oils. Life is a cycle, and sometimes that cycle involves a lot more poop than you'd like to admit. You'd think after soaking in donkey milk and smearing fermented crocodile paste on your face, the worst would be over. But no, because now it's time to deal with your eyes, those deep, coal-rimmed windows into your very noble soul. Except today they're itchy. And it's not just from yesterday's sun glare off the Nile. It's the lice. Yes, your eyes might look divine, but they're harboring tiny, unwelcome roommates. You settle onto your cosmetic stool, an ornately carved piece of wood shaped like a crouching baboon. Your servant sets down your cosmetic palette with a respectful bow. It's made of green schist and shaped like a fish, symbolic of rebirth beauty, and maybe irony considering what's about to go on your face. First, the Kohl. You probably imagine a cute black eyeliner pencil. No. What you get is a rough black powder made from galena, a naturally occurring form of lead. Yes, lead. And soot. And sometimes even crushed beetle shells for extra shimmer. You dampen the powder with a few drops of oil, then use a thin stick of ivory to drag it across your eyelid. It burns a little. You blink and a flake falls into your eye. It stings more. Perfect. Why would anyone do this? Surprisingly, it wasn't just for looks. The lead in Kohl actually may have had antibacterial properties. Some modern scientists believe it helped fight off infections in Egypt's famously sandy, fly-swarming environment. Historians still argue whether it was a deliberate medicinal practice or a happy accident that just happened to look fabulous. But the benefits end there. Because the downside, Eye Gunk. The Kohl melts in the heat and mixes with sweat oil and airborne dust. It collects in the corners of your eyes and hardens into crusts by afternoon. These crusts are seen as charming by some. Others call them Nile pearls. You just call them uncomfortable. And then there are the bugs. You blink again, trying not to draw attention to the crawling sensation near your lash line. It's subtle at first, a tickle. But you know the truth. These lashes, a 5-star resort for lice and mites. Royal women were particularly vulnerable thanks to the layers of sticky makeup and rare face washing. The warm, moist environment around the eye, enhanced by oils and pigments, was ideal for infestation. You reach for your eye comb, a small bronze tool that looks like a miniature rake. You gently sweep along the lashes. Something drops into your lap. You don't look. You don't need to. To make matters worse, the same mixture you used around your eyes is often applied under your arms. That's right. Some noblewomen used Kohl to darken underarms, believing it made them appear more defined. The result? Sticky armpits lead poisoning and absolutely no odor improvement. But at least they looked good in murals. Back to the eyes, though. Once the black liner is set, you add a splash of green malachite powder to the inner corners. It's bright, vivid, and deeply symbolic, associated with the goddess Hathor and protective magic. But malachite also toxic if inhaled, which you do every single day. Some fringe cosmetics include ingredients like crushed pearl cow bile or even powdered animal bones, all believed to enhance vision or connect you to the gods. One recipe promises clarity of sight and favor of Ra if applied under the moonlight while chanting. You've tried that one. It mostly gave you a rash. There's also the matter of your eye cups, small alabaster bowls used to mix and store your eyeliner pastes. These are never washed. The dried clumps of previous mixtures sit inside like relics breeding who knows what. You scoop some out with your applicator, not really caring anymore. Because this is what beauty demands. Infection be damned. And here's something even more unsettling. Eye makeup was a communal affair. Sisters, cousins, even rival wives might share the same Kohl jar. And the same stick. No wiping in between. Just dip, swipe, repeat. It's a microbiological nightmare. You once saw your aunt use hers after coughing for 20 minutes into her hand. But she's still radiant and full of gossip, so who are you to judge? Historians still debate how much of this makeup was self-applied versus done by servants. In elite households, makeup attendants were trained specifically in eyeliner application. One scroll refers to them as painters of the divine gaze. That's poetic for eye gunk technicians. Now that your eyes are done, your servant steps back, tilts her head, and nods in approval. You glance into your mirror again. The black rims make your eyes pop. You look fierce, powerful, slightly infected, but undeniably royal. To finish, she sprinkles a bit of scented powder on your shoulders, a blend of crushed rose petals, powdered resin, and dried citrus peel. It's meant to distract from the sulfuric tang of the eyeliner and the stale honey sweat bouquet still lingering from earlier. It doesn't work, but the effort counts. You blink once more. The itch is still there. You ignore it. You have to. Because the appearance of divinity outweighs the comfort of humanity. And you've got a royal dinner to attend later one, where your eyeliner might literally drip off your face if the candle heat is too strong. So you rise from your stool, eyes, line lashes twitching, and smile. You look flawless, at least from a distance. Just don't let anyone get too close. Your eyes are painted, your face is tight from crocodile paste, and your limbs still carry the faint sting of a pumice stone massage. You'd think the hard part of your day as an Egyptian noblewoman is over, but you haven't even addressed the crowning glory of royal hygiene, your hair. Or more accurately, your wig. Because guess what? Your real hair is long gone. Hair for the elite was considered both sacred and suspicious. Left unwashed and untreated in the Egyptian heat, it turned into a breeding ground for lice nits and worse. So the common solution, especially among noblewomen, was to shave it all off. Clean, bald. A freshly scrubbed scalp was the ultimate canvas. Think of it like a living mannequin head that occasionally weeps sweat. Your personal head shaving is done twice a week by your most trusted servant using a sharpened bronze blade. There's no lather, just a damp cloth and a prayer that today's razor isn't dull. You sit on a stool, head bowed, while she carefully drags the blade across your scalp. The sound is unmistakable, a soft scrape followed by the faintest wince as it catches a bump or mole. Once finished, she applies an oil made from castor and thyme to soothe the razor burn. It smells sharp and earthy and gives your bald head a glossy sheen. You glance at your reflection in a polished bronze plate, your skull gleaming like a desert melon. But you don't go bareheaded for long. Now comes the daily ritual of wig maintenance. Egyptian wigs weren't just costume accessories, they were full-blown, high-maintenance status symbols. Yours is a heavy, layered affair made from human hair, sometimes yours, often someone else's, woven with plant fibers, and in some cases even goat hair for extra volume. Chic. The wig is stored in a cedarwood box, when not in use, cushioned with perfumed linen. But here's the thing, all that hair, real or not, still attracts bugs, especially lice. Yes, even your fake hair is a parasitic paradise. Before it goes on your head, your maid combs through it carefully with a narrow-toothed comb carved from ivory. Occasionally, she squints, pauses, and pinches something off a strand. You pretend not to see. She pretends not to have seen it. A mutual agreement of denial. To freshen the wig, she spritzes it with oil of blue lotus and cedar. It helps, for a few hours. Then the sweat from your scalp begins to seep through, and by mid-afternoon, the wig smells like damp reeds and ambition. But in the morning light, it's perfect, glossy, full, and arranged in thick, symmetrical braids. You duck your head as she lowers it into place. It's heavy, like wearing a thatched roof. The heat builds instantly. There's no ventilation, no wig cap, just a thin linen wrap under the massive hair which soaks up your sweat like a sponge you didn't ask for. Some noblewomen preferred shorter curled wigs practical for the heat and less likely to slide during ceremonies. Others, like yourself, favored long, elaborate styles with beads, gold clasps, and even tiny charms braided into the hair. One of your strands carries a tiny carved amulet of Hathor meant to protect you from evil thoughts, which is ironic considering how often you've cursed this wig under your breath. Historians still argue whether wigs were always worn in daily life or reserved for rituals and public appearances. Some evidence suggests noblewomen might wear simpler house wigs when lounging in private. But even these were intricately styled. Because status never takes a day off, not even in your own bedroom. Fringe detail time. In rare cases, wigs were perfumed from the inside, meaning clay cones or little sachets of myrrh were hidden beneath the inner base. As the head heated up, which it always did, the scent would slowly release. Romantic idea. Less romantic in practice, especially when the melted resin starts sliding into your eyes mid-procession. Your wig is finally secured with a thin linen tie crisscrossed under your chin, like a helmet strap. You can't shake your head without causing it to tilt, so you learn to move with elegant stillness. No sudden gestures, no bending too fast, and absolutely no running, though honestly, who runs in this heat? And now, with your hair perfectly in place, it's time for the decoration ritual. Thin gold wires are looped through selected braids. Small beads of lapis and carnelian dangle from the sides. A tiny silver hawk is tucked near your temple, facing forward. It's beautiful and also a potential concussion hazard if you lean too close to a wall. The final touch, a dusting of ground ochre along your part line meant to highlight the wig's symmetry and reflect the sun during ceremonies. It's messy and sometimes flakes into your eyes. You've developed the skill of blinking around it like a pro. You rise now, regal and rigid, your neck stiff from the added weight. The wig has transformed you. You are no longer a sweaty, oiled, dung-masked mortal. You are divine and slightly itchy. But of course you won't wear this same wig forever. Wigs get retired. Some are ritually buried, especially those worn during important life events like childbirth or coronations. Others are passed down. You still remember when you received this one from your aunt, who said it had good fertility luck. No pressure. You step into the corridor, neck straight, chin high, trying not to think about the sweaty pool forming under the wig band. You look poised, radiant, untouched. No one needs to know what's crawling in the roots. The wig is heavy. Your eyelids feel slightly lead-poisoned, and your skin is a delicate tapestry of stings, scrapes, and sticky oils. Naturally, that means it's time for breakfast. But not the kind you're picturing. You're not biting into warm bread with a side of figs. First, you're drinking something that smells like it was strained through a stable floor. Because this morning's elixir is a cleansing tonic meant to purge the body and balance the humors. Your servant brings a cup, a small alabaster vessel, etched with the Eye of Horus symbol of protection. You raise it cautiously. Inside, a thick, brownish liquid made from fermented barley, sour pomegranate juice, and pulverized sycamore bark. It fizzes slightly. You hesitate. Then you remember last week's gentle flush included boiled sheep's liver and onion water, so bottoms up. You gag just a little. The taste is bitter medicinal and leaves your tongue feeling coated in tree sap. But it's working. Within minutes, your stomach rumbles. You may need to excuse yourself. Again. These tonics, often used by royal women, were believed to prevent disease, enhance fertility, and somehow improve the glow of your skin. Historians still argue whether this was more superstition than science, but the scrolls claim Queen Ta herself drank this brew daily. Of course, she also had chronic digestive issues. Coincidence? After the tonic, you're allowed a few bites of food. A handmaid presents a small plate flatbread baked with coriander and honey, a sliver of dried fish, and 2 slightly squished dates. Everything smells faintly of smoke and clay from the oven. You nibble. The bread is dense and a little gritty, probably from the sand that snuck into the flour during grinding. Every noblewoman in Egypt had this complaint. No matter how rich you were, your molars were doomed. Dental hygiene was a tragic afterthought. You sip beer, yes beer, for breakfast, but not the kind you're picturing. This is cloudy, lukewarm, and lumpy with leftover mash. Beer was the staple drink of ancient Egypt, safer than water and packed with calories. Royal women were said to prefer it with dates and lotus extract for sweetness. Some even mixed in powdered frankincense, believing it had purifying effects. You can't confirm the science, but you can confirm the belch you're about to stifle. A fringe practice mentioned in one priestess's journal involves drinking a solution of crushed beetles and white wine once a week to cleanse the womb. That particular tonic has thankfully fallen out of fashion in your circle, but your cousin swears it reversed her skin spots. She also developed a rash. So, it's a toss-up. Once fed and mildly burping fermented cereal grains, you're ready for the oral hygiene ritual, and this one's a doozy. You begin by chewing a twig from the Salvadora persica tree, a natural toothbrush favored for its fibrous texture and antibacterial properties. You work the end until it frays, then scrub your teeth with the primitive brush. It tastes vaguely like minty wood, which is honestly a nice break from donkey milk. Next comes the tooth powder, a chalky blend of crushed pumice ash and salt. You dab the twig into it and scrub again. It does clean your teeth, but at a cost. The grit wears down enamel like sandpaper on a pearl. By your age, most noblewomen had exposed nerves and cracked molars. Smiles were maintained more through willpower than dental structure. And what about bad breath? Oh, there's a remedy for that too. You chew cinnamon bark soaked in myrrh oil or pop a lozenge made of frankincense and dried mint. These help mask the smell somewhat. But you know, and everyone around you knows, that morning breath is a communal experience, especially after barley beer and beetle wine. Occasionally, if your breath is particularly offensive, like after a meal involving fermented fish paste, your servant will prepare a mouth fumigation. This involves leaning over a ceramic pot filled with burning herbs, thyme, cinnamon, and occasionally chunks of dried orange peel. You inhale deeply while a servant gently fans the smoke toward your face. It's supposed to dispel inner rot. It mostly makes your eyes water. There's an unspoken competition among palace women about who has the whitest teeth. One priestess claims to use crushed pearl mixed with donkey milk, while another brags about rinsing with vinegar boiled with copper dust. You tried that once. Your gums bled for 3 days. Historians still debate whether Egyptian noblewomen suffered more from dental infections than commoners. Some studies suggest the richer diets full of honey, dates, and preserved fruits led to higher rates of tooth decay among the elite. Others argue it was the gritty bread that wore down everyone's molars equally. What is certain, nobody was flashing Hollywood smiles under those linen veils. And yet, despite the discomfort, these rituals were followed meticulously. Your smile is an extension of your status. Rotten teeth mean divine imbalance. Pain is merely part of purification. Your oral routine ends with a final rinse rose water, mixed with a drop of palm wine swished around and spit into a clay pot. A servant immediately whisks it away, as spitting in front of others is considered deeply improper. She disposes of it in a scented pit near the gardens where it joins yesterday's vomit-inducing tonic leftovers. The circle of life. Now that your breath is mostly acceptable and your belly lightly bloated with barley bubbles, you're free to rejoin palace society. A meeting with your sister-in-law awaits where you'll pretend not to notice the green tint of her teeth or the licorice-smelling goo clinging to her lip from her latest digestive salve. You take one last breath now, tasting faintly of rose palm mash. Square your shoulders under your bead-draped wig and head off to face another royal day. You may smell like you've been marinated in a perfume market explosion, but your mouth is clean, or at least, cleaner. After you've polished your teeth with rough twigs and masked your breath with fragrant herbs, it's time to think about your nails, or rather the complete lack of grooming, that would horrify any modern mani-pedi enthusiast. Because for Egyptian royal women, nail hygiene was as gross as it was important, and yet somehow managed to involve dirt resin and even crocodile dung. You sit down before your handmaid, who presents a small, crude wooden box containing your manicure tools. There's a thin bronze pick, a scraper fashioned from a sharpened seashell, and a small knife with a wobbly handle. You'd hope this was a spa kit, but it's more like a medieval torture set. First, your servant gently pries beneath each fingernail with the bronze pick. Ancient Egyptians knew that dirt and grime gathered under nails could carry disease, but their cleaning methods were less than delicate. Sometimes the pick slips, scraping raw skin and causing a small stinging bleed. You bite back a sigh. Beauty is pain, right? Then comes the more unsettling part, applying resin to your nails. No, it's not a clear polish. It's a thick, sticky goo made from pine resin and crushed frankincense. The idea is to harden and protect the nails, making them less prone to breaking. Unfortunately, it's also a perfect trap for dust dirt and microscopic bugs. You once found a tiny beetle fossilized in last month's resin coat. It was a macabre keepsake. Historians still argue whether resin was primarily protective or purely decorative. Some fragments of royal tombs suggest nails were often painted in bright reds or yellows, using powdered ochre mixed with animal fat. You prefer a subtle sheen, less flamboyant but no less sticky. Now to the grossest bit, the nail dirt ritual. It may sound like you're about to be condemned, but noblewomen actually prided themselves on removing the earth's curse from beneath their nails. For this, you use a paste made from crushed crocodile dung mixed with honey and crushed herbs. Yes, crocodile dung. The Egyptians believed it had powerful antibacterial properties plus a magical ability to ward off evil spirits. How much of this is magic and how much is desperate hygiene is hard to say. Your handmaid carefully applies the paste, then scrubs gently. The smell is pungent, somewhere between a swamp and a spice market gone wrong. You can't stop yourself from wrinkling your nose, even as you remember the story of Queen Hatshepsut, who reportedly bathed daily in a similar dung mixture to preserve her youth. If it worked for her, it's worth the stench. After scrubbing, the paste is rinsed off in cool water scented with lotus petals. You wash your hands thoroughly, though a faint smell clings stubbornly to your skin for hours afterward. Your nails look cleaner, but you suspect you've just invited new bacteria to your cuticles. Speaking of cuticles, there's no such thing as trimming them gently. You use the seashell scraper to peel them back aggressively. It often causes minor cuts, but those are quickly anointed with a balm made from myrrh and beeswax. The balm smells like a summer garden, though it stings if applied to open wounds. You learn to flinch less, and your toenails, well, those receive far less attention. Often hidden by sandals, they are left to fend for themselves. But the occasional ritual involves a similar regimen, especially before grand events, when your feet are washed in a tub infused with mint and crushed pomegranate seeds. It's supposed to soften skin and prevent fungal infections, which were probably rampant, considering the typical palace floors. Fringe hygiene lore says that rubbing the palms and soles with crushed snail slime encourages smoothness and fertility. You've never tried this one mostly because you can't imagine collecting enough snails to make it worthwhile. Plus the sensation sounds slimy. Finally, your hands are adorned with a subtle but elegant touch. Your nails are sometimes tipped with gold leaf, a symbol of your divine status. These gold tips are glued on using a mixture of natural gum resin and beeswax, which, while visually stunning, make nail care even stickier. You try to avoid banging your fingers, but accidents happen. Historians still argue whether nail adornment was purely symbolic or had practical purposes like strengthening fragile nails. The archaeological record is spotty. Some royal mummies show perfectly manicured nails while others have ragged, bitten-down claws. Royal life clearly varied. You flex your fingers, feeling the slight tackiness of resin and gold. It's cumbersome, but worth it for the status it conveys. And you remind yourself at least it's better than smearing crocodile dung on your face again. For now. Your hands gleam faintly with resin and gold, but the day has barely begun. Next, it's time for what might be the most notorious part of your royal hygiene routine, the bath. But hold on, this isn't the warm, bubbly soak you're imagining. Nope. It's a ritual so strange and sticky, even your closest handmaids whisper about it in hushed tones. The palace bath chamber is a marble-lined room heated by the sun's rays and lit by flickering oil lamps. The tub is shallow and wide, carved from alabaster. You climb in carefully, the smooth stone cool against your skin. But the water isn't just water. No, it's a concoction of milk, honey, and fermented beer with crushed herbs like thyme, frankincense, and lotus petals floating on the surface. Sounds heavenly, right? Well, sort of. Milk is believed to soften your skin, honey to nourish it, and beer to cleanse impurities. But the beer also makes the water slightly sour, and the milk curdles after a few minutes, turning the bath into a sticky, sludgy mess. You settle in, feeling the weight of the day's oils, and dirt begin to dissolve. But your relief is short-lived. To exfoliate, your servant scrubs you vigorously with a rough cloth woven from palm fibers designed to peel away dead skin. This is no gentle massage. It's a full-body scrape-down that leaves your skin pink and raw. If you wince, you remind yourself of Queen Cleopatra, who famously bathed in donkey milk to keep her skin soft. Historians still argue whether this story is myth or fact, but either way, milk baths were a symbol of luxury, and your mixture is the closest you'll get. Now comes the sticky part. Your servant smears a paste of ground alabaster stone, crocodile dung, and honey all over your body. Yes, more crocodile dung. This paste is believed to act as an exfoliant, antibacterial agent and magical cleanser. It smells like wet clay and swamp with a hint of sweet honey. You suppress a grimace. You sit still as the paste dries, turning into a hard shell on your skin. This makes it easy to scrape off with the seashell scraper, revealing baby-soft skin underneath. The ritual is harsh but effective, and you remember how your grandmother swore it kept her pure and radiant. You're willing to suffer for a bit of glow. Once the paste is removed, you rinse with water infused with crushed lotus seeds and myrrh. The scent is heady and sweet, and you breathe deeply, savoring the fleeting freshness. You pat yourself dry with linen cloths, careful not to rub too hard, as your skin is still tender. A fringe detail. Sometimes you add powdered malachite, a bright green mineral, to your bath paste, hoping it wards off skin diseases and evil spirits. The green stain can be tricky to wash off, and you often look like you've been in a fight with a forest. After drying, your skin is anointed with a mixture of olive oil, sesame oil, and crushed herbs, warmed gently to ease application. This seals in moisture, protects against the desert sun, and leaves your skin glowing with a subtle sheen. You can't help but run your hands over your arms, feeling the smoothness beneath the oily film. Historians still debate how often royal women bathed. Some suggest daily baths were common, while others argue that the scarcity of water and the complexity of these rituals made them a once or twice weekly luxury. You lean toward the latter, since this process takes hours and leaves you too exhausted to do anything else. You step out of the bath, slippery and fragrant, and wrap yourself in a linen robe perfumed with blue lotus and frankincense. Your hair wig waits in its cedar box, promising another hour of sweaty heaviness. But for now, you savor the brief moment of softness and cleanliness, knowing full well it won't last. You glance at your reflection in the polished bronze mirror. Your skin glows with a dull, oily radiance. Your eyes, heavy-lidded, seem softer in the flickering light. You feel both divine and disgustingly human, a paradox you've grown used to. Now that your skin gleams and your body feels unusually light from the bath, it's time to wrestle with your hair, an ordeal both divine and maddening. You might think ancient Egyptian hair care was all smooth braids and lotus-scented oils, but prepare yourself, the reality involves grease bugs and an epic battle with wigs. First, you sit before your hairdresser, who is both an artist and a war veteran of your scalp. Your natural hair, mostly hidden under layers of braids and extensions, is thick but dry, prone to tangles that feel like knotted ropes. Hair washing in ancient Egypt was no simple rinse. You scrub your scalp with a mixture of natron, a kind of salt water, and crushed dates, a harsh, abrasive paste that scrapes away oils and dead skin but can leave your scalp raw. You wince, but this is necessary. Dirty hair was a sign of uncleanliness and divine displeasure. Your hairdresser then massages your scalp with a fragrant balm made from castor oil, frankincense, and crushed acacia gum. This gooey concoction smells sweet and resinous, but is thick enough to weigh down your braids. Still, it promises to nourish and strengthen your locks, keeping those pesky lice at bay, or at least manageable. Speaking of lice, oh yes, lice. Despite your best efforts, these tiny invaders are a constant problem. You spend a good portion of your day picking through your braids with a fine-toothed comb made from ivory, trying to capture these little monsters before they lay eggs. Historians still argue whether lice infestations were worse among royalty because of the heavy wigs and oils, or if common folk had it just as bad due to less frequent washing. You'd bet on the former. because when you find a louse, it feels like a personal betrayal. Once your hair is clean and oiled, you face the real challenge: your wig. Egyptian royal women loved elaborate wigs made from human hair, sheep's wool, and sometimes even flax fibers. These wigs were often styled into intricate braids, adorned with beads, gold threads, and occasionally tiny charms for protection. The wigs are heavy, sometimes weighing up to 5 pounds, and sweaty underneath, especially under the blazing Egyptian sun. Wearing one feels like sitting under a dead animal's pelt, but it's a non-negotiable part of your daily look. Without it, you're not royal. Before putting the wig on, your hairdresser ties your natural hair tightly with linen strips, then places a fine, soft cap over your scalp. This is meant to protect your skin from irritation and help keep the wig stable. Then the wig is carefully positioned and fastened with pins made of bone or bronze. Wigs were not just fashion statements. They also had a practical purpose, shielding the wearer from dust, sun, and lice. Sometimes the wig would be dusted with scented powders made from crushed flowers and herbs to keep it fresh. You secretly suspect the only thing that really keeps it fresh is the absence of oxygen underneath. A quirky tidbit: some wealthy women had wigs embedded with tiny tubes filled with perfume oils. When the wearer moved, these would release subtle scents, a primitive version of a personal fragrance diffuser. You wonder if anyone ever sneezed at close range and ruined the whole effect. Historians still debate how often wigs were washed or replaced. Some believe they were daily washed with special soaps made from animal fats and ashes, while others argue wigs were replaced so infrequently that they became hotbeds for lice and other pests. You're firmly in the latter camp, having once caught a tick nestled in the folds of your wig. Not a moment you cherish. Once your wig is secured, you add your final touches: a headdress of gold beads and feathers, sometimes topped with a uraeus, the rearing cobra symbol of royal power. You catch your reflection in a mirror and barely recognize the woman staring back. She looks regal, mysterious, even divine, though you know she smells like a mix of sweat oil and crushed flowers. You step into the palace corridors, wig heavy but pride heavier. It's just another layer of your royal armor protecting you from the world's chaos while hiding all the little horrors beneath. Emerging from the wig's suffocating embrace, your focus now shifts to one of the most delicate, yet surprisingly messy royal routines: makeup application. You might picture a flawless alabaster face kissed by the sun, but the reality is a labyrinth of powders, pigments, and smelly concoctions that would make any modern beauty guru pause. First comes the infamous Kohl eyeliner, the dramatic black line that frames your eyes like the wings of a falcon. You pick up the Kohl stick made by grinding galena, a shiny lead ore, into a fine powder and mixing it with animal fat or gum arabic. The paste is rich and thick, easily smudging if you blink too fast. You carefully paint along your lower eyelids and waterlines, enhancing the almond shape of your eyes. Besides its aesthetic effect, Kohl serves as a sun shield, reflecting glare off the desert sands, and as a deterrent against eye infections. The ancient Egyptians were surprisingly ahead of their time here, using lead-based Kohl for its antimicrobial properties, though we now know it could be toxic in high doses. Your hand shakes just slightly, but you're a royal woman. You're expected to perfect this ritual daily. You blink a few times, smudging the lines unintentionally. You make a mental note to avoid windstorms for the next hour. Next up, the cheeks and lips. Rouge is applied using a small stick dipped in a mixture of red ochre and animal fat. The color is bright and earthy, but sadly not very long-lasting. You must reapply frequently or risk looking like a washed-out ghost. For the lips, you smear a sticky balm made from beeswax, crushed carmine beetles, and frankincense. Yes, those crushed beetles give the signature deep red color, but also leave your lips slightly gritty. You lick your lips once or twice, regretting the sandpaper feeling, but appreciating the rich hue it gives. A fringe cosmetic tidbit. Some priestesses reportedly applied a paste made from ground ants and honey to their faces, believing it cleared acne and scars. You're not tempted to try that one anytime soon. Beauty routines in the palace have a survival of the weirdest vibe. Historians still debate whether the heavy use of lead-based Kohl caused long-term health problems for Egyptian women, or if its antiseptic benefits outweighed the risks. Some mummies have been found with traces of lead poisoning, but whether it was cosmetic or environmental remains an open question. To complete your look, you dust your face with a fine powder made from white kaolin clay to mattify the skin and reduce shine. It's applied sparingly, as too much can cake and crack under the sun's heat. But the real kicker comes when your servant presents a small jar of perfume oil, a rich, sometimes overpowering blend of lotus myrrh and cinnamon. The oils are dabbed lightly on your wrists, neck, and behind your ears. It's intoxicating and instantly makes you feel more regal, but it also invites comments about smelling like the marketplace depending on the strength. One day, you overhear a handmaid whisper that Cleopatra's perfume was so potent, it once caused a visiting Roman ambassador to sneeze uncontrollably. You laugh quietly, because if your own scent ever made anyone sneeze, you'd be banished to the servant quarters. Your makeup routine ends with a final inspection in the polished bronze mirror. You might not look like a modern supermodel, but you embody the Egyptian ideal: dramatic eyes, radiant skin, and a presence that demands attention. Despite the sometimes disgusting ingredients and the hours it takes, this transformation is worth it. You take a deep breath, practicing your royal smile, and prepare to meet the day's visitors, dignitaries, and perhaps a few jealous rivals. Your face is your mask, your armor, and your curse. After your makeup is in place, your hands and face glowing with oils and pigments, it's time to attend to perhaps the most challenging aspect of your royal hygiene: your private rituals. Now, you might be expecting a delicate, whisper-soft routine, but brace yourself. In truth, the intimate hygiene practices of Egyptian royal women were often messy, awkward, and yes, quite disgusting by today's standards. You start by heading to the chamber designated for personal cleansing. Privacy in the palace is limited, but you at least have a curtained alcove and a handmaid's discreet assistance. Water is precious here, so full rinses are rare. Instead, you use linen cloths dampened with scented water, infused with lotus flowers and myrrh, to wipe yourself clean. The cloth is soft but not quite fresh. It's reused multiple times throughout the day, which you try not to think about. For menstrual hygiene, you rely on absorbent materials made from soft papyrus fibers, sometimes wrapped around linen strips. These early pads are changed as often as possible, but the heat and scarcity of water make this a constant battle against odor and discomfort. You recall the whispered stories that some priestesses believed menstrual blood held magical powers, both sacred and dangerous, a belief historians still debate. Your own feelings are less mystical and more itchy. To mask any unpleasant smells, you apply a paste made from ground frankincense, cinnamon, and resin, which smells sweet but can also sting if applied to sensitive skin. You hope no one notices the faint residual scent of sweat mixed with these perfumes. An unexpected hygiene habit is the use of a small stick something like a primitive toilet brush made from fine palm wood to clean the anal area after relieving yourself. This is dipped in scented water, but it's hardly the sanitary ritual you'd hope for. Occasionally you catch yourself thinking about how many hands have wielded that same stick and quickly push the thought away. Bathing your feet is another intimate routine often overlooked but important. After removing your sandals, you soak your feet in a basin of water mixed with crushed mint and pomegranate seeds believed to soften skin and keep away fungal infections. The feeling is refreshing, especially after walking on hot stone floors all day. You also perform regular douching with a mixture of water, wine, and crushed herbs aiming to cleanse internally. This is a delicate procedure carried out by your handmaid with utmost discretion, though it's hardly comfortable. Scholars still argue whether these methods truly helped or caused more harm, considering the bacteria that might thrive in such mixtures. A fringe belief held by some women in the court is that smearing a little bit of honey mixed with crushed beetles around intimate areas encourages fertility and wards off infections. You're thankful to have escaped this ritual for now. Despite the difficulties and messiness, you know these rituals are vital. They keep you pure in the eyes of the gods and your subjects, reinforcing your status as a divine figure. Every part of your body must be tended to even the parts you'd rather forget. As you finish, you feel a mixture of relief and gratitude for clean linen, perfumed waters, and the hope that no unexpected odors betray your royal secrets today. With your private rituals done, you now shift focus to a surprisingly neglected but vital area, your feet. Yes, those often forgotten royal appendages endure a lot, from trudging palace corridors lined with dusty stone to standing through endless ceremonies. You think you're above foot odor? Think again. The floors of the palace are swept and washed daily, but a fine layer of sand and dust is always present. You step lightly, sandals clicking, but your feet soak up the grit. Foot hygiene for royal women is an intricate dance involving baths, scrubs, and secret balms. First, you soak your feet in a basin filled with warm water mixed with crushed mint leaves and pomegranate seeds. The scent is sharp and fresh, and the slight tingle on your skin is welcome after hours spent standing on hot surfaces. You rub your feet gently, focusing on the heels and the spaces between your toes. But softening your feet is just the beginning. You must tackle the inevitable calluses and cracked skin caused by the desert's relentless dryness. To do this, you use a homemade pumice stone, actually a piece of porous volcanic rock you've imported from distant lands. The texture is rough and scratchy, but after scrubbing your feet, feels surprisingly smooth. Now here's where it gets weird. You apply a thick paste made from crushed crocodile dung, frankincense resin, and honey to your soles. Yes, again with the crocodile dung. This pungent mixture is believed to disinfect wounds, prevent infections, and soften tough skin. Your footmaids warn you to wear sandals for hours afterward to avoid staining the palace floors. The smell lingers, a faint, swampy sweetness as you walk. Historians still argue whether this practice was widespread or limited to royalty who had access to these rare ingredients. Either way, the combination sounds like something a modern spa would avoid. For toenail care, you repeat the earlier nail cleaning ritual, scraping beneath nails with your bronze pick and coating them with resin to protect against breakage. Unlike fingernails, toenails get less attention, but royal protocol demands they be tidy before any formal event. Once your feet are scrubbed and coated, you slip them into soft, embroidered linen socks. Rare treasures imported from Nubia, and then into sandals made from fine leather, often decorated with beads or gold studs. The socks help keep the pungent pastes from rubbing off, but they can be hot and uncomfortable. A fringe tidbit: some royal women believed that rubbing crushed snail slime on their feet helped with fertility and softened rough skin. The idea makes you cringe just thinking about it. Collecting enough snail slime for a foot treatment sounds like a full-time job, and a slimy one at that. After all this fuss, you marvel at how much care goes into your feet, given they're usually hidden beneath long robes and grand sandals. But you remind yourself that every part of you is a symbol of divine perfection, even the parts that no one sees. As you stand and flex your toes, you feel a strange mixture of disgust and pride. It's a royal ritual no one talks about, but one you must never neglect. By now, your hands have been through a full royal spa treatment of their own manicures, oils, and endless scrubs. But there's one more layer to your grooming arsenal: nail decoration. Ancient Egyptian royal women took their nails seriously, sometimes dangerously seriously. You sit at your vanity preparing for the next step. Your nails are first trimmed with sharp bronze scissors, then shaped with the same seashell scraper you used earlier on your skin. Any dirt or residue hiding beneath is meticulously cleaned out with a slender bronze pick. You're careful not to chip or crack your nails, as brittle nails are considered a sign of ill health or poor divine favor. Once clean and shaped, you move on to painting. The pigment of choice, a vibrant red ochre mixed with animal fat, which stains your nails a deep earthy red. The look is dramatic and royal, signaling your high status to anyone who notices your hands. For contrast, some women add black accents made from kohl or soot, creating intricate designs that resemble hieroglyphics or lotus flowers. Here's where things get a little unusual. Some royal women apply a thin layer of beeswax mixed with crushed carmine beetles and gold dust over their nails, not just for color, but also to strengthen them. This mixture is sticky and can trap dirt if you're not careful, but it shines brilliantly in sunlight. You admire your nails glinting like tiny rubies. But your manicure routine isn't just about aesthetics. The beeswax coating also acts as a protective barrier, shielding your nails from desert dust and damage from palace chores. Considering the number of times you've had to hide dirty or broken nails from prying courtiers, this makes perfect sense. A quirky tidbit you overheard once: some noblewomen believed that wearing red nails made them irresistible to the gods and by extension to potential lovers. You're not sure if this is true or just palace gossip, but it adds a little fun to the tedious process. Historians still debate how common painted nails were among different social classes. Some evidence suggests only the wealthiest had access to these pigments and tools, while others argue that simple dyes and clays were used by common folk as well. Either way, royal manicures were a clear status symbol. As a finishing touch, you slide a pair of fine linen gloves over your hands. These aren't ordinary gloves. They're perfumed with a mixture of myrrh, cinnamon, and lotus oil, softening your skin while protecting your nails and hands from the harsh desert air. Wearing gloves indoors may seem odd, but in the palace it's a sign of refinement and delicacy. You flex your fingers, admiring the rich color and subtle scent that clings to your skin, even if the process was sticky, smelly, and occasionally itchy. It's worth it for the glimpse of perfection. The final flourish in your royal hygiene routine involves an elaborate ritual of fragrance and body scent, arguably the crowning glory, and sometimes the most overwhelming aspect of your daily preparations. After hours spent scrubbing, oiling, and adorning every inch of your body, you now immerse yourself in the world of ancient Egyptian perfumes, a fragrant realm both intoxicating and at times borderline suffocating. Perfume in your world is not just a luxury, it's a declaration of status, a weapon in social interactions, and a ritual to honor the gods. The most prized scents come from exotic resins and flowers, myrrh, frankincense, lotus, cinnamon, and even jasmine. These are distilled into oils so potent that a single drop can linger on your skin for days. You begin by dabbing a little scented oil behind your ears, on your wrists, and along the hollow of your throat. The sensation is warm and soothing, like a soft blanket wrapping around your senses. Your handmaids then bring out alabaster jars filled with thick, sticky ointments, infused with perfumes which they carefully massage into your neck and shoulders. These ointments, however, are a double-edged sword. While they smell divine, their heaviness often leaves your skin feeling sticky and greasy. Combined with the desert heat, you occasionally worry you smell more like a melting candle than an Egyptian queen. But you remind yourself this is the scent of power and divinity, not mere cleanliness. A quirky fact: some perfume recipes included the use of castoreum, a secretion from beaver glands, lending a musky undertone that some courtiers found unsettling. You try not to think about how those ingredients are sourced. There's only so much squeamishness a queen can afford. Your hairdresser then lightly spritzes your wig with a concoction of scented waters. An ancient perfume spray, if you will, made by infusing rose petals and herbs in distilled water. This keeps your elaborate wig smelling fresh, or at least less like a hot, sweaty nest. Historians still argue how much ancient Egyptian perfume influenced later cultures. Some suggest Greek and Roman perfumers borrowed heavily from Egyptian formulas, while others believe they developed their own distinct traditions. Either way, Egyptian royal women set a fragrant precedent that echoed through history. As the final step, you don a delicate golden collar encrusted with precious stones, not just a piece of jewelry, but a fragrant amulet sometimes embedded with tiny vials of perfume to release scent gradually throughout the day. You feel the weight on your shoulders and the subtle fragrance drifting upward, a final sensory signature of your royal presence. You glance into the mirror, a vision of glittering gold, fragrant oils, and powdered skin, flawless, yet deeply human underneath. Despite the sometimes disgusting mixtures, the swarming bugs in your wig, and the sticky balms, you embody the power, beauty, and ritualistic complexity of Egyptian royalty. As you step forward, ready to face the day's intrigues and ceremonies, you carry with you the scents, textures, and secrets of a hygiene routine that no mere mortal could survive without a sense of humor and a strong stomach. Now, as you settle down from this long, strange journey through the rituals and routines of Egyptian royal hygiene, allow your thoughts to slow and soften. Imagine the warm desert sun fading gently behind distant pyramids, the golden light dissolving into the calm embrace of twilight. Your skin, once heavy with oils and perfumes, now feels cool beneath soft linen sheets. You might still be carrying the lingering scents of frankincense and myrrh, or perhaps the faint memory of a wig's weight on your head. But those sensations gently fade, replaced by a quiet serenity. Every detail, every strange mixture and ancient practice was part of a world where beauty and ritual intertwined, where even the most disgusting habits carried meaning and power. Breathe deeply and let your mind drift, knowing that you have stepped into the shoes of queens and priestesses, lived their secrets, and emerged wiser, if a little more grateful for modern soap and water. The past can be strange and messy, but it is never dull. So now dim the lights a little more, feel the soft hum of the night around you, and let your thoughts ease into dreams as smooth as the Nile's flowing waters. End of script. Sweet dreams.